In the comments on my last video, there were some great suggestions and emphatic discussion around what lands could come to Universal Great Britain. Firstly, I just want to say a huge thanks to everyone who engaged on that video. It was great fun seeing everyone's different ideas, and if you haven't watched it yet, go ahead and do so, as I won't be covering the background of the park again. We're just going to dive straight in. Now, I want to take my planned layout for the park, modify it slightly, and then discuss what rides could come to each area. There are two main things in my previous video that I want to revisit. The first is Harry Potter, and the second is Lord of the Rings. Originally, I had said that it was unclear whether the licensing from Warner Bros. To Universal for use of Harry Potter in the theme parks would extend over to the UK. However, from my research, I can see that this is not the case. According to this article from Inside the Magic, Universal has a pretty watertight licensing agreement with Warner Bros. To use the franchise in its theme parks. Then there's this from Orlando Park Stop stating that through a licensing agreement, Universal was granted the license to utilise the Harry Potter property in all of their theme parks. Seems pretty guaranteed, right? Wrong. If you actually take a look at the document both articles are using to support these claims, it's this licensing agreement here, which is the original 2007 agreement between Warner Bros. And Universal for the development of the first Harry Potter land. The first. This agreement only covers the Orlando Resort. There is no mention of additional properties or Universal's other park by name. Now, we do know that Universal has built many other Harry Potter themed lands outside of Orlando, so the agreement must have been updated. However, there is no evidence of an updated agreement we can find online, so there is still uncertainty there. After all that, you may be thinking that I'm still convinced that Harry Potter will not make an appearance at the UK park, but I want to admit that I have now been convinced by all of you that I think there will be. I know it sounds like I'm contradicting myself, however, you all just made too many good points to ignore. Harry Potter revolutionised Universal's theme park game. Attendance at Islands of Adventure the year after Hogsmeade opened jumped 29%. That is huge. Universal would be bonkers not to bring what's probably their most successful theme park IP to Universal Great Britain. This blog here makes the claim that the contract in between Universal and Warner Bros. There is a requirement that Harry Potter be included in any new park Universal builds. Although there was no source to back this claim up, so far it has been correct. Now yes, Universal Studios Singapore doesn't have a Harry Potter themed land, but that is owned by Genting and is operated under license from Universal, so technically Universal didn't build it. So therefore, it may be that Universal are actually required to build a Harry Potter land in the Universal Great Britain. Who really knows? We do know that the UK is the home of Harry Potter, so how could we not get a Harry Potter land here? Many of you made a great point that the theme park would likely not compete with a Warner Bros. Studio tour, but actually support it. Think about it. For Harry Potter fans, it will be a must-do to do both, as they offer different experiences. And for theme park or Universal fans who wouldn't be bothered about the studio tour, they may visit if it's easy to do so with a combo ticket. If the two companies can agree on some sort of combined ticket and shuttle bus setup, I think it would be a benefit to both parties. So to summarise, yes, the information around licensing still seems to be unclear, but I am now of the opinion that Harry Potter has to appear at the UK park. Next, on to Lord of the Rings. I admit I truly am a fool of a took for not bringing this up in my original video. The Lord of the Rings are my favourite films ever. I must have watched them all at least 10 times, including the extended versions. I quote Gimli and Gollum all the time, and out of anything I've mentioned, Lord of the Rings would be my number one land I would like to see created. Many of you mentioned my mission in the previous video. Lord of the Rings seems to be in the front of many people's minds when it comes to this park, partially due to the rumours that have been circulating while that Universal has acquired a theme park rights to the franchise. This, however, I think is false. Universal do not own any part of the rights for Lord of the Rings. It's Swedish gaming and entertainment company Embracer Group who have exclusive rights to the Lord of the Rings and Hobbit books. This gives them rights to films, video and board games and merchandising, but more importantly theme parks and stage productions. Then you also have Warner Bros. Back in the conversation again, as they own the designs and rights of the Peter Jackson film adaptations. This means for Universal to make a Lord of the Rings theme park land, they either need to purchase the rights from Embracer, which is unlikely, or make a deal with them for use in theme parks. If they then want to use the characters and designs, such as Ian McKellen's Gandalf or the Bag End from Peter Jackson's movies, then Warner Bros. Will also need to be involved, adding further complication. So it has to be said that while Embracer Group is a gaming and entertainment company, they are not a theme park company. And building a theme park from scratch when you have zero previous experience of doing so can be a risky and expensive venture. Therefore, Universal still might be able to license the rights to build a Lord of the Rings themed land from Embracer. It was rumoured back in 2020 that one of the expansions planned for Epic Universe would be Lord of the Rings, with Universal apparently waiting for a Harry Potter level IP. And even before that, Lord of the Rings was rumoured to replace parts of Toon Lagoon in Islands of Adventure. Tolkien himself was also British, the rolling hills of Oxfordshire, inspiring the hobbit holes of the Shire, and it's a property with a devout following in the UK. Now, after all this, and though it crushes me to say it, I think a Lord of the Rings themed land is less likely than people think. Partly due to the licensing difficulties, but mainly because I think Universal will just go for other tried and tested options first. If we're saying that Harry Potter is coming to the UK park, would that suffice for magical representation? The crossover between Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, and Wicked is strong, maybe strong enough for one of these IPs to give the other two the boot. If we look at current representation as measures of strength, it's going to be Harry Potter that wins. Universal is a business. They have created some amazing parks, but ultimately they are risk averse. They know what to expect from a Harry Potter land, whereas the others are untested, which might mean they are less likely to appear. I hope I'm wrong, but I think we may be left just with The Boy Who Lived. Additionally, there may be limitations in terms of the number of lands Universal are looking to build. If you haven't seen, it was reported last week that apparently it's planned for Universal Great Britain to have 4 zones. Now, this isn't direct reporting, and we can't guarantee it to be true. However, if it is to be the case, it would be the Universal Park with the fewest lands. Epic Universe will have 5, but Islands has 8, and Beijing has 7. It's also unclear what they mean by zones. Maybe they could have a kids zone with both DreamWorks and Nintendo areas. I hope they mean it's something similar to Epic Universe, where you have a central hub with 4 theme zones accessible through portals. I can't be sure, but I just feel like 4 total lands for a theme park is way too few. I am going to modify my layout to cut it to 4 themed lands, plus the British themed entrance, as it's already too difficult to cut to 5 lands, let alone 4. Transformers is the first one to go. I feel like out of all the ones here, it's an easy pick. And then I think we also have to say goodbye to Wicked. It kills me to say so, as I was so convinced that we would get it in the UK, but I just can't see Universal putting Wicked and Harry Potter in the same park. They're just too similar. That leaves us with Jurassic World, Universal Monsters, Harry Potter, and DreamWorks, in addition to our British themed entry. All of these land choices have already proven to be successful, and each fills a niche different to the others. Again, please let me know what lands you think Universal will create in the comments, but keep in mind, you now only have 4 or 5 choices. Right, let's get into the attractions. I've been ruthless with my land choices, so I'm going to push the boat out and take more risks with the attractions. For example, it would be easy just to plop down another Hogsmeade, but I want Universal to create a new land, like they've just done for Epic Universe. Let's start with the British themed entry land. As I mentioned in my previous video, these lands often contain mostly food and merchandise shops, but it will have an attraction or two. To this land, I would add a rotating stage show that would host British IP. It would be similar to the Bourne Spectacular, with properties like James Bond and Doctor Who utilising the moving stage and screen to great effect. The entry land would also contain a super cute Paddington Dark Ride, something slow moving that the whole family can ride and watch Paddington on his escapades. Moving counterclockwise, DreamWorks Land would be the next land accessible through a brightly coloured entrance leading into an indoor land. This would be similar to Land of Awesomeness at Studios Beijing, but both Kung Fu Panda and Trolls would headline in here. I would take the Kung Fu Panda boat ride from Beijing, but use the Trolls and their storyline for the attraction. They would also get a music-themed party spinner where you have to go up and down in time with the music. Kung Fu Panda would instead get a village square housing multiple food stalls and food-themed kid-friendly flat rides. Think spinning in bowls of ramen or noodle-themed slides. Other attractions would use members of the Furious 5, such as taking a short flight with Master Crane in a balloon ride, or Master Monkey's play area. Upon exiting this building, you would be greeted by Shrek's Swamp. Shrek 5 is set to release at the end of 2026, and I think it's still one of their strongest IPs. You would be able to take a ride on Shrek's Swamp Coaster, a small kiddie coaster, or say hi to Donkey at Shrek's house. I would also put a mini log flume that floats around the waterway of the swamp. The edge of the land would then slowly become darker as you're led towards the monster's land. For Universal Monsters, I can see a land similar to Dark Universe, which opens at Epic this May, but unique in its own right as well. I picture a stony bridge leading from Shrek's Swamp up to a spectacular facade of Dracula's castle. The actual building would extend much farther than it looks, but Universal would preserve the sightlines so it's impossible to see from inside the park. Once you enter through the dark gates, the castle opens up in front of you on a massive scale. A huge entrance room with a tall vaulted ceiling, to which they could add fog effects to the rafters to create an effect similar to the Great Hall in the Harry Potter films. Multiple corridors would branch off, leading to meet and greets, food kiosks and toilets, but on one wall you would have a spooky archway that leads to the land's main ride, a multi-dimensional armed dark ride similar to Monsters Unchained at Epic. A similar concept for sure, with the creative movement of the vehicles and world-class animatronics, but overall a different story. This ride would be focused on Dracula as you're in his castle, as he attempts to lure you into his dungeon, but you narrowly escape after breaking his vampiric hypnotism. Bats, Dracula's brides, maybe a feature from other monsters like Gilman, this ride would have it all. Then, once you finish riding, you can either enter the banquet hall, which will be a sit-down restaurant, or out into the gardens where the other attractions await. You would now be outdoors, but the atmosphere would still be dark and gloomy due to the thick trees. As you follow the path away from the castle, you enter the Wolfman's Village. This area would take inspiration from the 1941 film and the recently released 2025 film, with a scattering of villages and farm buildings. There would be a multi-launch family coaster that winds through the village and farmlands and then heads out into the woods again, where the Wolfman hunts you. There would also be a highly themed top spin, representing the villagers tying you up as they think it's actually you that's the Wolfman. Now you better be careful, because next it will be you who's butchered by villagers if you don't subscribe. Only 5% of my viewers have subscribed, so please do so, as it means a lot. Crossing the next bridge, you will enter the Isle of Dinosaurs, which is based on the island from the films. As it will be a brand new land, I think it would all be themed to the Jurassic World movies rather than the Jurassic Park originals. This land would be tropical and luscious, and some were saying this may be tricky with the UK climate, but I totally expect Universal to be able to landscape it with hardier plants that can weather the British winter. The land would have wide open plazas with research buildings and dino exhibits. In one of these research buildings is where I would love to see the first copy-paste ride, which is Jurassic World Adventure from Universal Beijing. I mentioned this ride in my first video, and ever since I first saw the video of this ride, I've been obsessed with it. It looks incredible on my phone screen, so how could it not be even more awesome in real life? Another dino exhibit would contain our next ride. Picture giant spherical greenhouses like those of the Eden Project, but this would be a Pteranodon aviary. You would take a Mack inverted power coaster, again similar to Beijing's, but this time around the canopy of the aviary, coming in close proximity to dino animatronics. This would also allow the planting of tropical plants that would better represent the island. Lastly, it goes without saying that I'm putting a high-thrill, intimate multi-launch in this land. No, not a Velocicoaster, but something of a similar thrill level. I would actually picture it being more similar to Batman Gotham City Escape at Parque Warner Madrid. You enter into another dino exhibit, but an accident happens, maybe a fire, and the dinosaurs start to escape. You need to launch out of the building to safety, but of course we do this in style, with a tall top hat and exciting layout. This would give the park its signature attraction, something to attract guests from around the world. Lastly, from the Isle of Dinosaurs, you enter the final land, Harry Potter. As I said earlier, I want this to be a new land. However, looking at major landmarks that haven't already been utilised in other parks, there aren't that many left. You need an instantly recognisable landmark to anchor the land, and for that reason, I'm going back to Hogwarts. I think it has to be the Wizarding School, as it's set in the UK and is also by far the most iconic landmark. Nevertheless, it would still be a new land. No Hogsmeade this time, it's being replaced by the Quidditch pitch, Forbidden Forest and the Great Lake. I would also make the castle itself more walkable, not housing Forbidden Journey this time, but allowing guests to walk around the rooms from the films, dining in the Great Hall, or taking a potion brewing class. There would most definitely be a troll in the dungeon, and a dark ride in the depths with have you fighting said troll with spiders, boggarts and maybe even a basilisk. The Quidditch pitch has to have some sort of flying broom attraction. Not sure what that could be, but Universal would figure it out. Then the Forbidden Forest would contain another coaster, not as technical or as expansive as Hagrid's, but of a similar concept, where you would come face to face with centaurs and unicorns. Lastly, there would be a skyfly on the edge of the Great Lake, representing the giant squid having grabbed you and flung you around. And that's it. I've squeezed 5 coasters, 5 dark rides, 5 flat rides, 2 water rides, plus a stage show and a play area into the layout of this park. I don't have the ability to work out all the acres each attraction would take up. I'm just assuming there's enough space for them all. I do hope you've enjoyed this further exploration into Universal Great Britain. Please like the video if you have. Hopefully we will get confirmation soon so we can continue to speculate. Thank you for watching and I will see you in the next one.